You know, for a few years, I struggled with it, to be honest with you. I don't know if you struggled with this one too. It's about the unjust steward. And here's a man, he worked for a certain rich man. And the rich man accused this steward of wasting his goods. Oh, you have just not handled my properties, my money, my things appropriately. And look, you know what I had, you've just wasted it away. So guess what? No longer are you going to be my steward. Your time of stewardship is coming to an end. So the steward thought within his own mind, what shall I do? Once I'm no longer in this employment as a well-paid steward, can I dig ditches? Or can I beg? Well, I'm too ashamed to beg. And I really don't want to dig ditches. So he called all the people that owed debt to this rich man. And he said to one, in verse 6, he had asked, how much owest thou unto my Lord? And the man in verse 6 says, 100 measures of oil. And he said, I'll tell you what, take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Just pay half. And then another one he asked, and he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said, take thy bill and write 80 or 40. And in this manner, he disposed of the debts by forgiving a substantial part of his master's debt that was owed by these people. Trying to think very worldly and very wisely, thinking that once he was no longer a steward, that these people would still treat him well, welcome him into their homes, feed him, and accept him. In verse 8, the Lord commended the unjust steward because he had done wisely, for the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. And here's why I struggle with that. I don't know if you struggle with that. It seems that this parable is encouraging almost a fraud, right? He's working for this wealthy man, and he's, for his own gain, going ahead and forgiving this debt that's not his really to forgive. And yet, the Lord commends him for doing this and thinking, well, that's a wise thought. And I've come back to it a couple of times, but here's my take on it now. Verse 1 talks about a certain rich man. If this is a parable, who would that certain rich man represent? It would represent our Father in heaven.
Sure.
Right? And the steward would be some think it's Jesus. You know, I think it could be anyone that has been given talents. There could be 10 talents, 5 talents, and 1 talent. You know, given the responsibility over the vineyard. But I like your thought about Jesus. I'll have to look at it in that context another time. But I don't think it's Jesus, because Jesus did not waste anything God gave him. I think this pertains to those who were given a responsibility in God's vineyard. So, when he told him he was going to have to give an account of his stewardship going forward, this man thought, okay, what shall I do? And he looked at those around and he said, okay, I'm going to forgive them of their debts. If this is speaking of the Father, and you or I are the steward, we have people that sin against us, that do things against us. When they do things against us, they're doing things against God as well. They're heaping sin up on themselves, and they are now in a position where they've got to be forgiven both by us and by the Father. But what we can do while we're still on this earth and still in this position is we can forgive their debts. We can forgive what those have done against us. That is wisdom. In fact, the Lord commends this unjust steward, because even though he was a debtor himself and wasting the talents he had, he was wise enough to go and forgive those around him. Think of the Lord's Prayer. And we're required to forgive those who trespass against us. What is the condition around that? He will forgive us as we forgive those who trespass around us or against us. And flip that around the other way. He will not forgive us for that which we do not forgive. Is that true? So we see here that forgiveness is going to have a very big bearing on our judgment day. We will be forgiven as we have forgiven others. And I believe that that's what this steward is doing. He's forgiving things right from the Father's own treasury.